Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Business event. I'm Kathy Flaherty. I'm a principal at Matthews, Carter & Boyce. Matthews, Carter & Boyce is a full-service CPA firm located in Fairfax, Virginia. MCB was founded in 1947, and in a few short years, we'll be celebrating our 75th anniversary. MCB is guided by the belief that each and every client deserves careful, individual attention at the highest level of service that our profession has to offer. Our firm is 70 members strong, of which 70% are women and 25% of our principal group is also women. MCB has been named to Accounting Today's 2020 Best Accounting Firms to Work For, and we are the only firm in Northern Virginia that has received this distinction. MCB started the Women in Business events a few years ago. We joined with one of our business partners to have events for women in our firms that were easy for the attendees to meet new people through networking and to learn by having a short presentation on a topic of interest to those attendees.
So I started FlexProfessionals with two great business partners about 10 and a half years ago. And I'll give you a quick backstory. So I think I was probably the last person I ever thought would start their own business. And there are days I still think that. And the reason I started my business was pretty much out of desperation because nobody would hire me. And the reason nobody would hire me was about 10 years ago, I had taken some time off from my professional career to raise children, and I wanted to, at that time, get back into the workforce. And my business partners were kind of in that same boat, and we wanted something where we could get back in a meaningful way, but also have flexibility and maybe part-time hours. And what we found at that time was really there were no good avenues in which to find meaningful part-time or flexible work. And I was actually even told, call me back when you're ready to be serious and when you're ready to work hard. And that really infuriated us and got us so frustrated. And we thought, wow, there's so much talent out there and businesses are missing out on this huge untapped pool of really incredible, highly skilled, mature talent. So fast forward 10 and a half years later, we now have a network of over 16,000 job seekers, amazing talent. And we're based both in DC Metro and Boston Metro. And we work with some really incredible small to mid growing businesses and help them get access to this cost-effective pool of resources. And I'll just throw out that today we have two of our clients, so Vasseghi Law and of course Matthew Carter's Boyce. And I just want to thank them for allowing us to be part of today. I love being part of these series and working with MCB because they not only support women through series like this, but I know from all the candidates that we've placed that they're really so supportive. They work hard, but they're so supportive of the flexible work model. And those are the kinds of companies we love to work with. So I thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. And I want to tell you, everybody, we have a great panel. So I'm about to let everyone introduce themselves. But first, just two quick housekeeping items. Number one, if you put your cursor down at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. And so we want to try to make the next hour as interactive as possible that you can on Zoom. So please, throughout the next hour, feel free to submit a question. And we have a lot of people attending, so we'll try to get as many as we can. And then that brings me to the second point. If for some reason you don't get your question answered, or say you want to talk to a panelist, or you are considering you'd love to work with FlexProfessionals, we'd love to have you. You will be receiving an email after today's event, and that will have our contact information, specifically our email, to follow up. Okay, so I'm excited to get started because we have a great group of women here today. So I'd first like to introduce Karen Livingston, who is the Associate Director of Entrepreneurship Programs at George Mason University. So Karen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, great to be here. So I actually started my entrepreneurial journey in public accounting, and I still hold my CPA license. And I transitioned out of accounting into entrepreneurship because I still love solving complex problems, but entrepreneurship allowed me to have more autonomy over the solution, the problem that I wanted to solve, the way that I wanted to solve it, and applying that solution. So out of public accounting, I founded a renewable energy company. And from there, it led me to helping other entrepreneurs launch their ventures. It led me into teaching entrepreneurship at the university level, starting with Syracuse University. And fast forward now, these past 2 years, I've been working at George Mason University, bringing university-wide entrepreneurship initiatives into the university. And so that entails, bringing those entrepreneurial values across the university, bringing entrepreneurship into the curriculum, and then also helping faculty and students go from idea to launch. And I would say, especially being in this education space, what's been really important for me is working with the students and bringing them those entrepreneurial mindsets and skill sets, because they're transferable. So they can bring them into the workforce with them. They can take them and say, start a venture at 20, like the media tells us people do. They can start a venture at 40, right, which is more the average age of an entrepreneur. Or they become an entrepreneur, right? And no matter what, kind of these critical thinking, problem solving, negotiation skills are applicable across the board. So I love sharing those.
It's great to be on the panel today. I am so happy to be here to share. As Ella mentioned, I'm Veronica Matthews. I am owner of VLM Coaching and Consulting. My background is that I have 26 years of human resources experience. And as Ellen stated, she started her business to be able to support those individuals that that desire to work part-time, and that's me. And so I am not only working part-time, but I am also building my business, and my employer is very understanding of that and allows me to do that. And so my company is called Coaching and Consulting because through human resources, I realized that I really enjoyed solving problems through people, and I enjoyed being that conduit to be the relationship builder, the career builder, the idea behind developing and training. And so I've pivoted into my own organization since 2016 in order to be able to focus on just what I love and just what I do well. And it's just such a pleasure to be able to actually dibble and dabble in both, not only be an entrepreneur, but also to be an employee and to make a difference in an organization and to make a difference in people's lives. And so I serve organizations and individuals through coaching, training, consulting. I'm also a speaker and an author, and I love kind of being all those ands, and it's great to be here to share with the panel and be able to impart what my challenges and my loves and my joys have been with the attendees.
I am new to entrepreneurship. I launched my firm January 27th of this year, just before, a few weeks before all of our new reality came into play. I'm a business and employment lawyer. I advise companies on employment policies, defend against discrimination claims, generally try to keep my clients out of trouble. That's what I like to do. And on the business side, I represent individuals and entities in business disputes, partnership disputes, things like that. I think I always wanted to do this, but I was a little bit scared. So probably even in my first couple of jobs, I was trying to make management decisions and criticize in my head, maybe not criticize, but try to think of how I would do it better. And I think that was it was always in the cards for me. My parents were entrepreneurs, my sister's an entrepreneur, and finally I'm almost 40 and I took the leap. So I just learned that it must be because I'm the average age now.
We'll go ahead and move ahead with some of the questions because we have a great team of panelists, as you can see. So I want to go ahead and maybe start with you, Karen, on the first question. What was the idea behind you starting your businesses, and who do you serve, and who are your clients? And what do you do at the center?
So in starting my business, I fell into it accidentally, right? I found an opportunity in the market, and I was lucky enough to be at a place in my life that when I looked at cost benefit and I looked at risk, I could take that leap, right? And so that was extremely important. And it really fit a passion for me in thinking about intrinsically at the end of the day, what have I contributed to the world? That's what led me to kind of found my first business. And now I'm serving both faculty and students, which are in very different places in their life, but both will come up and kind of say, I have this idea, but I'm not sure what to do next, ... right? And so the great thing is that I work with those who, some examples are mobile solutions for EV charging for cars, to nonprofits that are doing work both in the US and overseas in third world countries, as well as, say, new 3D printing technology. So it is really kind of this broad knowledge to help entrepreneurs kind of meet their goals. Does that answer kind of the couple part question? Is that good?
That's good. That's very good. Veronica, why don't you follow that?
Okay, thank you. So I started my business in 2016 when I was working full-time. And the idea came on the heels of me taking my first coaching course that I became certified in. And I was like, wow, I really love this. And I want to make a difference outside of just the companies that I work with. So I said, okay, well, how do I do that? And so I researched LLCs and started that. And then I inked my LLC and started, kind of getting on all these sites to be able to support people in their careers and in their development and as they wanted to grow in their leadership. And so then I got scared and I was like, oh my goodness. That means I have to be in front of people. That means I have to put myself out there on the internet. That means I have to do all these things. And I'm an introvert and I'm in the background and I'm an operations person and I, kind of move and shake on the inside. And then I was like, okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to just let your certification go to waste and let your company go to waste? Or are you really going to activate in it? And so then that's when I got started with actually moving forward and branding myself and getting out there and trying things. And so who do I serve now is I am a leadership development coach. My tagline is that I transform struggling managers into leaders of impact and influence. And what I'm purposed to do is to support women who have experienced trauma in the past to rebuild their confidence. Because after you've experienced a trauma of either a job loss or loss in a personal situation or someone has victimized you, then there's a level of confidence that is reduced. And so my passion and my purpose is to support women with rebuilding their confidence. And so I didn't really ever think I started my business with the intention of being an entrepreneur only, and never actually still continuing to work. So I'm still figuring that out. But one thing that COVID has taught me is that the ability to pivot and to be flexible. So who knows what's on the horizon.
So Roya, you had also given us a little insight into why you started, and you're the newest or the most recent entrepreneur here. Why don't you give us a little bit more on why you started?
Like I said, I had been wanting to do it for a long time. I had my first baby and I moved jobs to something with a little bit less of, less demanding hours and where I could develop clients and kind of play that entrepreneurial role within an organization, which I'm also a fan of if you can do it the right way. I think I heard the term intrapreneur, and I don't know if that's a word, but I love it. I think that's what I was. And then I had my second baby. And in between, I was kind of struggling to figure out who my clients were going to be, who did I want to serve, who did I want to focus on. And I love the people that I worked with, but my vision didn't align with theirs. We had different visions. I wanted to serve smaller clients and be a little bit more flexible. Small businesses sometimes can't put a lot of cash up front to get going and do need legal help. So, and I certainly love women-owned businesses too. That's a focus of mine. With all that in mind, I decided that after having another baby and needing more money, it would be a good time to go off on my own and start with very little client base. But I did it, and I'm really happy I did.
As I mentioned, the fear came up for me, and the fear came up for me again, big time, along with the inner critic and imposter syndrome and all these other things in 2018, when I actually tried to step out there in entrepreneur land all by myself with no boat and no net and no nothing. And I realized very quickly that it takes a lot of confidence to be an entrepreneur. It takes a lot of faith, and it takes really resilience in order to step out there in those entrepreneurial waters and to be successful. And so the journey for me has looked like, I don't know if you can really see my hand with the virtual background, but it's looked like this. So I've been on a real roller coaster, and the fear and excitement are the same emotions. They're just on two opposite ends of the spectrum. And your mindset is really what gets you from one to the other. So if you are in fear and you say, oh, I'm scared, you'll stay in fear. But if you are in fear and you say, wow, I'm excited about what happens and what's to come and what I can do, then you'll shift from fear over into excitement, and it'll be a different energy. And I realized in my journey of ups and downs and highs and lows that the resiliency is what sticks with you, and really what helps when people say, oh, I want to work with you, but I can't afford you. Or our budget really can't afford training and coaching right now. And so then, every no gets you to your yes, and get you closer to your yes. And so through this journey, I guess the most challenging thing has been managing my emotions and not letting that take control, and really managing my mindset and building my confidence in order to be able to move forward and stay in the game in the midst of all of the challenges that are there.
So Karen, you're shaking your head quite a bit as Veronica is talking. So maybe can you elaborate on that and tell us some of your most challenging and most rewarding moments, and also what you see working with other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so drawing off of that, there are so many things, right? We're all having these familiar experiences, which is why it's so great as a community for us as entrepreneurs to come together and support each other. And as Veronica was talking about, things like getting outside of your comfort zone, right? And that scary place that it puts you in. The other thing that unfortunately I have found as a challenge, and why I love, a strong entrepreneurial community, is that there are those, as you put yourself out there in life, who will try to raise themselves up by kind of bringing you down. And so you have to, right, that some of that behavior you see maybe in cliques in high school doesn't magically go away when we graduate high school, right? And so look for, the thing is to look for those within your community, right, that raise you up, right? We all rise kind of together, right, and support each other. And it was a challenge that I didn't expect at first, especially within, female entrepreneurship and whatnot. But there is, look at this great group, right? And we're all supportive, and we're having this great conversation, and we have these shared experiences. And so as Veronica talks about, the inner critic and, that comfort zone and comparing yourself to others, don't get caught in the trap of, thinking that somebody else shines, your light shines a little bit less. Bring us all up together, because we do really great things together. And so out of challenge comes that opportunity, is what I'm kind of also thinking about with what Veronica brought up.
And Roya, you clearly had some challenges starting when you did COVID, little ones. But you mentioned, the reward has been working with the clients and so many people you've helped. Do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think that I can say what Veronica and Karen said any better than they said it. I totally agree. I fight that imposter syndrome and fear every day. Being the bottom line is so scary. There's no partner to review my work. There's no executive committee to tell me if I'm making the right decision. I am all of those things. But it's so worth it to be able to work with the people that I want, be able to have the flexibility to be with my children. It was so hard to have them both home for 5 months, but I don't know what I would have done with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and, 2,000 billable hours a year. It just wouldn't, it wouldn't work. So I had to really focus on, the flip side of it is I don't have a steady paycheck, but I had to focus on building business and then doing the work that I needed to get done. And then when I was done with that work, then I had to do the stuff that I had to do at home. And that's really been, the flexibility has been so rewarding. So trying to build a business when you can't meet face to face with anybody is really hard. Or trying to be in business when you can't meet face to face, not just building a business. It's been difficult. But I've had to keep up my networking because my network has been my greatest source of support and referrals, but just support. I have like a team of cheerleaders behind me that like it almost makes me want to cry every time I talk about it because it's so amazing. I knew they were there, but they showed up. They just really showed up when I launched my firm. So I'm very grateful for that. But I had to keep doing this. I had to, do one-on-one Zooms. I had to change my networking. I was always out there. I was always at a networking event. I was always trying to have coffee or lunch with people because I like it. I genuinely like it. So the challenge has been trying to keep up that pace or something close to it with this new reality. It's a little bit better now. People will maybe meet for coffee outside, but for the most part, it's a lot of Zoom and a lot of phone calls. So I'm just trying to stay connected and trying to help people because this is so hard, not just on my clients, it's hard on my other attorney friends, it's hard on my friends and parents in other areas, other industries. So I think just focusing on helping people has helped me get through it.
So for me, 2020, even though all around us is craziness and chaos, for me, it's actually been my best business year because I have been exposed to opportunities that I would not have had they only been in person. So part of my business is I'm a speaker. And so I participated in a novel an anthology at the beginning of the year, and it was reduced. And it talks about the struggle that I had as an entrepreneur in 2018. And overcoming that inner critic and that imposter syndrome. And so I use that as my platform, and I counted up, and I've had so far like 18 different speaking opportunities this year. And those would not have been possible had it been all in person. And so 2020 and COVID and the shift to virtual has created and opened doors for me, and I'm very grateful for that. And other ways in which I've shifted is I've always, even in coaching before 2020, I've done it virtually, and I had to charge more if I met a person in person. And so I didn't have that disparity anymore, and so I could actually serve more people because I could do it all virtually. And it's been a great experience. And, so what I would say for those that are struggling in 2020 and shifting and making that pivot is just to try to be creative about ways in which you can serve in a virtual environment. What other skills can you use in order to be able to use in that environment?
Yeah, so off of that, I mean, right, we keep going back to this entrepreneurial mindset and how it does, right, get you through. I mean, being comfortable with ambiguity is certainly one of those mindsets. And historically, if we want to look on the bright side, out of disruption and change like we're going through now comes some of the greatest innovation, right, that we've seen throughout history. So there is that potential, but it can be difficult, right? And I'm helping entrepreneurs figuring out, do I pivot? Can I move forward with this business? Can I get creative, kind of like Veronica's talking about, and what skill sets do I have that now I can apply in kind of, the new world that we're in? I can say that for us, we had to move virtually kind of on a dime, both with our events, with our curriculum, and we even actually, so we took our makerspace, and while we normally would have been doing a lot more student projects, we actually pivoted and provided over 10,000 pieces of protective personal equipment to hospitals in the area, right? And what a great learning experience for students, thinking about supply chain, logistics, and giving back. So there was opportunity, within challenges.
In terms of something that might else be positive coming out of the pandemic, I think, one of the negatives I've been reading about is how women have, in particular, been unfairly burdened, given that women tend to share more of the household and child rearing responsibilities. But what I think the pandemic has done is expedited the adoption of flexible work. And so while I'm not saying that, after the pandemic, everybody's going to be working virtually, I've talked to so many business owners who have said, who previously said, oh, we'd never allow virtual work because we don't know if people are really working or how productive they're going to be. I even had a partner at Deloitte who used to say, no way. And he called me the other day, as a personal friend of mine. He's like, I was wrong. He's like, we're never going back to the old way of doing things. And so I think, that is something that will be a positive. And I think it will really help women, because what I've seen in the past is that there was kind of a ding against people who did ask for flexibility and who were working virtually. Maybe their compensation was a little bit lower. Maybe they weren't, get that promotion over somebody who was in the office. And now what we're seeing is everybody is getting used to this kind of, part virtual or a hybrid. And so I think that over time, it's really going to help women, because, it will be more the norm than the exception. So I hope that's something that, everybody can benefit from coming out of this.
Taking that, let's move on to, we've been in a rough year. Everyone's seeing some bright spots. What lessons have you learned, and where do you see the future for female entrepreneurship? So what advice could you give other entrepreneurs, for those just starting or adjusting the business in the pandemic and moving forward?
So I would say, certainly, like we're all talking about, find your tribe, right? Find those that can support you as you're getting out of your comfort zone, as you're doing new things. And what's really easy to tell people, right? And no matter if I have a guest in class, we're having a coffee chat, we as entrepreneurs talk about self-care and how important it is and how useful it is to recharge our batteries and get us to be able to do more. But honestly, to put it in practice is really difficult, right? Because as entrepreneurs, we get super focused and we've got things to achieve. But I do advocate again, and as a reminder of, self-care, keeping healthy, and recharging those batteries would be something I would recommend.
Karen, just to, on your point, I just read this morning that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had said the reason for her success in law school was because she had a child, and she said it forced her to, when she got home, she'd be at school from like 8 to 4:30, that it forced her to stop thinking about work or law and do something for herself or someone else. So it doesn't have to be a child, but it was just interesting perspective how that actually, she felt, led to her success.
Roya, do you want to give us your insight too?
Okay, but I was just getting teary-eyed over Ruth. Thank you for sharing that quote. So I keep saying this, but it's been so important for me. I think nurturing your relationships is the best advice that I can give. And so everybody has a network, and it may not be what you think it is. You may not think of them as your network. They're just your relationships. They're people. They're your friends. They're your family. That's your network. Those are the people you know. So nurturing those relationships, staying connected, and being really vocal about what it is that you want to do and what you're looking for. Not asking people, but just letting people know, I'm interested in this space. I'm looking to connect with, this type of industry or this person. And I think that that's been the most helpful. Even in my position, people would say that I have a big network, but a network is only good if you actually really have meaningful relationships with those people, and that you're helping them, and they know, they may be of some help to you in the future. With my network, I've been just asking to be connected with other practitioners in the area, because I think that that's a useful thing for me to do at this point in my practice in the Fairfax, Northern Virginia area. And so, whenever I catch up with somebody, I mention that I'm, looking to be connected with other people, or sometimes they just offer because they know somebody else that's in a similar position to me that would like to be connected. And that's been good. So I would say just nurture your relationships, because I think that advice stands no matter what the time, whether it's 2020 or, a good year, whatever that looks like these days.
Veronica, I know you've had some thoughts on this as well.
So those were awesome examples and recommendations, and I don't think that I could add much more to that. But really, in this age, for a person that's interested in pivoting or trying to figure out kind of where they go next, is to increase their level of self-awareness in what it is that what else lies inside of them, right? So if they're in a situation where the work that they're doing is not necessarily as fulfilling, or maybe they've started a business and it's not doing what it is that they would like to do, is to take some time and get in that self-care, and as Karen mentioned, and then also then go to the network and search and say, what else do you see inside of me that I can't see? And what can I do to shift and make some adjustments, and then to really listen to your inner coach and your inner champion that says, this is what people always tell you that you do something very well. And so how can you use that in this particular age? And what can you do to continue to foster that and to put that forth? And it takes a combination of everything that Karen and Roya have already said is within that network, and really taking care of self, because in this particular age, as Ellen said, we as women, if we do have children at home, we're leaders in our home, and then we're leaders in our life, and we're leaders at work. And so that takes a great level of pour out. And so your cup has to be super full in order to be able to have the energy and the stamina to be able to do that, and also the right mind frame to do that. So I would just kind of ratchet up the level of self-awareness through whatever it takes to connect with a mentor or coach, or just reaching out to your network and really tapping into to self.
So we have been experiencing quite a bit, and I think we've all touched on this. Ellen, you touched on it, the Deloitte partners saying they would never have work at home, and now they're not ever going back to the old ways. But that's impacted us, as we've all been noting here, in many different ways, because not just women, but men as well, we're all working from home. We go from one room to the other. We're trying to run a business. We're trying to do the schooling, give the care. My sister-in-law, I saw her over the weekend, and she said she can't turn off. She gets up at 6:30 and she's online until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. What are you seeing? How do we regulate ourselves? How do we make this work? How do we pivot ahead so that we don't have that burnout? So that, as we're all saying, that we take care of ourselves? Because I think, for the first month, 2, 3, everybody said, I can do that, right? And it's going to be great because I can do it in my jammies or my fluffy slippers. Now we're in month 7, and I think we are seeing people who don't turn off. So what are kind of your ideas or some best practices that we could take away on how to turn off or how to manage these times?
So for me, I think individually, it's all of us trying to find, what works for us as individuals. And so as much as I love numbers, and that's my background, I also love words and kind of quotes like what Ellen brought up, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so I usually get asked, I have good reminders to get me through some of these times. So I have a jewelry and pendant that usually people ask me about. And what it says is, a life lived in fear is a life half lived, right? And for me, it's these little reminders when I'm going through things, to kind of take a step back and think of things from a little bit different perspective. So I think, there are all these little tools and ways for us as individuals to find what works for us.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add to that is structures and boundaries. So first of all, boundaries is deciding that since you're in this environment and everything is commingled, what your family deserves. Your family deserves your time as well. And then even though you are working from home and you're using the company equipment, you still have a life outside of that. So it's determining what your boundaries are and set times to unplug, and so if your work hours are such that you have clients in another country, and that means that you work later, so that means you start later, and that means that you devote your time to yourself and your family in the morning, and then They know that you are working at a particular time. And then when that time comes to an end, then that is their time again. And that is the time that you can pour back into yourself. And then the structures. The structures are, what are the schedules for the children? What time do they need to be up? Just as if we were going to school in a physical building, we still have to be available online for that. And so what is it going to take to set them up in the morning? What is it going to take for me to be engaged in work during the day? What is it going to take for me to engage in the evening with them as well? And so the combination of those boundaries, first establishing the boundaries and then establishing the structure that go along with those boundaries, and then really holding yourself accountable, because the kids, even if they do walk by, mommy, while you're in the middle of that, and they're like, I need some help with this class, or, I got booted off, or whatever the case is, they will sometimes interact with each other. And the more that you hold yourself accountable to keeping your structures and your boundaries, the easier it is to manage those distractions and those intermittent interruptions.
Every day is a new day for me. Like, some days are good, some days are bad. I don't know if I'm avoiding burnout. I've had a lot of really tough conversations with my husband about delegating and boundaries and schedules, just to try to manage our kids and the unexpected, which inevitably happens with small children anyway. So it's just been difficult, and just trying to keep track of my time and set a schedule to the extent I can, but also not beat myself up when it doesn't go according to plan, because that's almost every day. And I was really, really getting frustrated with that in the beginning. And I'm not saying that I'm less frustrated now, but I'm working on it. And just being kinder when things, on myself, when things don't go my way.
So I want to tie this into a few questions that we've gotten from some of the participants on the call, because I think one of the ways that we can alleviate the stress or the pressure or set boundaries for ourselves is through our networking groups, how, and the sources that we have in our networking groups. So some of the questions we're getting based upon some of the comments here are, what is the best way to network, especially in this time? But also, how do you seek out mentors? And have you had a mentor? And are they someone who's helping you through this time? Or how has that been working for you? So Veronica, you're shaking your head, so maybe we'll start with you first on that question.
Sure. I'd say with that, how do you network in this age? A lot of it, of course, is remote. And so what happens is, let's say you are on your network on LinkedIn. If you do not have a LinkedIn profile, that's probably the first place to start. Develop your LinkedIn profile and see who you're already connected to and how you could possibly take that relationship from LinkedIn to a virtual conversation. Find out what you have in common, and maybe they can help you with something that you have going on, or maybe you can help them, and so offer what you can offer, and then have an ask for them, and then see if you can take the relationship to a Zoom call or to a phone call. Then as far as a mentor, a lot of people confuse mentors and coaches. And so I've had mentors. Actually, my mentors, I've worked for a lot of small companies. So they've been the owners of those organizations that have actually been my mentors, even though they haven't been in my field. But they've been individuals that I can tap into for advice and for counsel. And then I would just add to that, that coaches are available for you as well to be able to help you navigate in a different way, because mentors are there to give advice and to give support, and coaches give support in a different way, more so in helping to remove the blocks and boundaries that you exist. But the idea is to take it from online to offline if you can, and offline means kind of a one-to-one Zoom call or a telephone call.
Roya, do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. So I found that so I love I love the point about seeking mentors outside of your field. I think I've accidentally done that. I haven't sought them out, but it's happened for me. And I think that's a really great point to highlight, because I think people get a little bit narrow focus when they're looking for a mentor. I've always found that my best mentor relationships came when I wasn't trying to establish one. It just came from getting to know people and building the relationship. I know I sound like a broken record, but it really works. When I've kind of sought them out, it hasn't worked out as well. It just kind of flowed naturally. I think surrounding yourself with people that are where you want to be or on the way to where you want to be, a little bit ahead of you, is a really great thing to do, because, you know, one, you're inspired by these wonderful people around you, but it's also a great way to make connections with somebody that's a few years ahead of you that can give you advice and help you on your way. And also, don't underestimate a peer, you know, somebody who's at the same level as you. They can also be great sounding boards and mentors as well.
Karen, how about your insights?
Yeah, I mean, mine kind of just back what Veronica and Roya already brought up, right? And I think, you know, Roya especially saying something may not happen right away with that contact you make, right? So I have a lot of contacts that, you know, I've known or have been in my, well, old-fashioned way of saying Rolodex, right? I've been on my LinkedIn for years, and all of a sudden something is happening, right? And we found a way to connect and a reason to work together. So don't always expect, yeah, that immediately upon meeting something, that it's going to happen, but it does, right? And it does take a lot of relationship building and building a diverse network. Absolutely, I think that's a great point. And Veronica saying, you know, give and take, because you do have, right, value to offer. And it does help to offer something to somebody that's helping you out. So I think I just kind of second all of their great points.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. I want to ask a little different question. Everyone, as we go through life and being entrepreneurs, have had to deal with failures somewhere along the line, large or small. So what could you say would be one of the failures that you've experienced, but that also made you stronger as you moved forward?
Interesting. I'm trying to think. I think these days that we're supposed to have that answer right off the top of our heads for these, and certainly there is, you know, as we teach entrepreneurship, and I talk about, you know, fear myself and fear of failure and being comfortable with that and learning from it. It certainly did happen. So I'm thinking about, you know, even as a solar entrepreneur and first getting into, you know, going into RFPs and figuring out really how to present myself in a world that was really male dominated when we think about construction and solar. You know, those first ones did not go so well for me, right? And I really had to learn how to change my presentation to be able to win those contracts. So I guess, you know, I did have some learning from it that I applied. And then I also am always working with entrepreneurs, helping them take that failure and just take it as a learning experience, brush themselves off, and, you know, mend their wounds and get back up there, because it is that resiliency, right? And that ability to get back up.
Yeah, so I don't know that I had one particular event that was a failure for me. I think my whole 2018 was my failure. And that I just didn't have the right mindset. I didn't have the right level of belief in myself and my capabilities and what I had to offer and what I knew that I could do in making a difference in people's lives and in people's businesses. And so what I learned from that actual failure year was that if it begins, and Karen said this before, it begins with mindset. That is your foundation. You know, knowing who you are and knowing what your limits are, what your edges are, the edges of your comfort zone, and then go beyond that, and then really believing in yourself. And so how that has made me stronger is it has propelled me into the work that I do now, which is to support women who've been where I've been, who are where I've been, and help pull them forward, and then help leaders understand that the reason why you might default to micromanagement and the reason why you might default to wanting to control and manage is because there's something missing on the inside that is a lack of confidence. And so going through that has helped propel me into the work that I have now. So I would just say that, that was my fail forward moment.
Roya, do you have anything you can add or want to add?
Only that I guess by definition, I probably have a failure a day, if not more, but I learn from my failures. So, an example would be trying a creative case strategy and it doesn't play out the way that I want it to. It's not the end of the world. I can still come back and guess what? I learned it's probably not going to work next time, or not in the situation that I used it, at least. And there's no way to learn that from, I guess you could from watching other people, but you really only learn by doing, and that's how you get your experience. And you just have to have a little bit tougher skin and know that it doesn't mean that you're not good at what you're doing. It just means you're learning and you're pivoting, I guess, you're evolving.
Ellen?
I have a good failure that has stuck with me for the last 15 years, but I used to be in sales development for Hewlett Packard. And I had this really big meeting in New York with Sony, and where I had to present our strategy. And I practiced for weeks. I knew exactly what I was going to say when I went in. And I started talking about, how great we were. And the guy's like, aren't you going to ask me what my problem is? Like, aren't you going to ask me what I'm interested in? And he really went off on me. And I was devastated. Like I was devastated for months. Like I couldn't sleep. It was the most humiliating experience, the way he kind of talked me down. But I learned from that. That was such an important lesson that, you really have to, particularly as an entrepreneur, what you want to do is solve a problem for somebody, and you can't solve that problem until you really listen to them and understand what their problems are. And so I've taken that moment that was really humiliating, and I brought that. I remember that. I think about that like all the time. So anyway, I'm glad it happened.
But that's a lesson to learn, but a hard way to learn it, right? That clients, what are their issues and how do we respond to them? That's why we're all in business, right? To try and figure out, working with our clients, what are the issues? How do we move forward? What are the issues in the industry that we're in? And how do we move forward? And the only way we learn that many times is by listening or observing people around us, right? So a lot of the conversation has been talking about where we've been, where we are right now in 2020. What do each of you see as the future for you? We have 5 minutes left, maybe just in a quick minute each. How do you see the future? What do you see for the rest of 2020 and 21? And what gives you hope, maybe? Not sure who would like to start.
I can go.
Okay.
So in my very short time of being an entrepreneur, I've learned that I can't do everything by myself, which is where FlexProfessionals comes in and other resources. And I thought that I just wanted to be my own thing. And that's evolved, maybe because of COVID, just maybe because I'm learning the realities of running a business. And I think that's a good thing. And so I see the things that I like to do, and I'm hoping to grow a little bit and get people to help me with the things that I'm not so great at or that I don't want to do, so I can focus on the things that I'm truly passionate about. So that's been my little evolution and what I see hopefully for the future. So wish me luck.
Good luck. Veronica, how about you?
Okay, so what's on the horizon for me? For the rest of 2020, I just want to finish strong and, set myself up for for what's ahead. I do have a couple of things already lined up for 2021, so that's an awesome thing. And then just to continue that, I want to work more with organizations and to help them with the toxic environments that may have been exacerbated by COVID, and working from home, and kind of help them smooth that out with their leadership and through coaching and training programs that I can deliver there. And I also want to continue to expand my speaking and write another book. Probably another, I don't know if it'll be next year, but write another book.
Well, good luck to you as well. So, Ellen, anything you'd like to add in our last few minutes before we wrap up?
I'm cautiously optimistic about the next year and a half. I think for two reasons. Number one, we have a great team at FlexProfessionals, and so I think we're all extremely supportive of each other, and it makes it just a special place to work because of that. And number two, I think there's a parallel. We started the company in 2010 when we were coming out of a recession, and we actually did very well because there were a lot of businesses, you know, who don't like to invest too much when there's a lot of economic and even political uncertainty. And so a great way to still bring in resources and continue to grow without stagnating, without spending too much on overhead, is to embrace that, you know, part-time model where you can bring in people, test them out, and without having to put too much of your budget into it. So I'm hoping we're going to see the same thing as we continue to move out of this pandemic.
I want to thank everybody for being on the panel, for all of the participants that joined the webinar today. We are just about reached our time limit, but I did want to say thank you to everyone. And you will be receiving evaluation forms and also a follow-up email that will have all of the speakers' contact information. So if you wanted to continue the conversation with any of the panelists or all of the panelists, feel free to reach out. And we appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you so much for joining.